So this is one side of the individual kit and what it looks like. This side is filled with leaves because my first lesson was based on leaves, and so this is depicting different types of leaves, different sizes, different shapes, and so this side was entirely covered with leaves. This other side was covered in flowers of different varieties, different colors, different shapes, different sizes, because the second lesson was based on parts of a flower. And so for the sides, again, we have seeds, because seeds were a part of two of my lesson, parts of a seed and different types of seeds. Some of them are monocotyledonous seeds, while some are dicotyledonous seeds. So this is what the kit looks like, and I'm now going to explain each of the materials used inside of them in depth. So the first lesson was based on parts of the leaf. So this is a 3D diagram of a leaf that was used in my lesson, and with this came name tags. Yes, these are the labels for the parts of the leaves. Here was an activity where pupils would have had to come and identify parts. So these are the name tags for the parts of the leaf. Differentiated instructions were part of every lesson, and so for the first lesson, parts of the leaves, there were different activities for each group of pupils to do. These are the worksheets for differentiated instructions practice in the first lesson, which was based on parts of the leaves. Some of the pupils had to write parts of the leaf by themselves. Some of them had to do a word search and find parts of the leaves, and others had to identify parts of the leaves from the box below and label the leaf with it. For this lesson, samples of leaves were used as well. Leaves from the environment, just to show the children the different varieties, sizes and shapes of leaves. That is why it was important for me to depict that on the individual study kit, so that leaves can be seen in all different sizes, shapes, colors, and so on. For my second lesson, it was based on parts of the flower, and this was the 3D diagram that was represented in that lesson. This diagram also came with a game of dice and name tag. Some of those labels are right here, showing different parts of the flower. We have the petal, of course. Differentiated instructions were part of this lesson, where each group of students got a different kind of activity to do. Some of them had to label parts of the flower and write tree functions. Some of them had to label any three parts of the flower, and some of them had to match each part to the name of the flower. In this lesson, for the introduction stage, a dialogue was also used. The most interesting parts of this lesson was the made-up flower that was used at the end of the children had to recreate a flower without the use of a diagram. So what they basically had to do was to use cutout parts given in order to recreate this flower. The last two lessons were based on parts of the seed and the types of seed, and so this 3D diagram was used. While this part shows the labeling of the correct parts of the seed, labels were also used. So what would have happened is that this part would have been covered and pupils would have to identify parts of the seed for themselves. So in order for that to happen, labels were prepared so pupils could be a part of this activity as well. Differentiated instructions were definitely a part of this lesson as well. Some pupils had a diagram of the seed and they had to label parts of it. Some of them had to match parts of the seed to the name of the part of the seed. Others had to use the names given and insert it in the diagram of the seed. A game was also used during the course of this lesson to show different types of seed. The wheel game, where they had to spin the wheel and use this. Some of the seeds depicted here are monocotyledonous, some are dicotyledonous. So by playing the spin wheel game, pupils would have had to say whether the seed was dicotyledonous or monocotyledonous. A puzzle was also a fun part of this lesson, where it was cut into pieces. Each group, the class would have been divided into 3 groups, and each group would have had to see who can finish it off first. So this would have definitely been a fun activity for the class in fixing the diagram of the seed. Of course, an original copy of the seed was shown for them to see what it looked like so that it would be easy to fix. Now this is this paper is showing what was done in the introductory stage. This was a riddle that was printed out, so each student would have had a copy of this. It says, I am beautiful, sometimes I'm tall, sometimes I'm short. I've been changed into different shapes and sizes. I'm made up of many parts. Inside of me I carry a dear little plant. I nurture it and keep it safe until it's time to grow. What am I? So this would have been used in the introduction stage of parts of the seed. And below there's some notes that the students could use to follow along. Parts of the seed, functions of the parts of the seed. For my final lesson, I definitely would have been using back this diagram as a recap, because the other lesson focused more on the different types of seed. And so for this lesson, a fishing game was used. On the fishes, there were names of different types of fruits, and since the aim was, or the objective rather, was to get the children to understand that some seeds are monocotyledonous and some are dicotyledonous, they would have had to say whether this fruit was mono or dico, using the fishing game. So this is the string, this would have been the rod, and a magnet would have been at the end of this string so that the fishes would attach at the bottom. So yeah, this was a part of the fishing game. This was also a part of the final lesson, where each group would have been given this 3D diagram of different types of seed of all sizes, shapes, and colors, and each group would have had to identify whether they would have had to guess if the seed was monocotyledonous or dicotyledonous. So this would have been presented to each group. And of course, bringing it down to the end of the final lesson, differentiated worksheets would have been a part of the lesson. For this one, pupils would have had to follow instruction which said draw a picture of either a monocotyledonous seed or a dicotyledonous seed. And so that would have been it. Another set would have had to say, give examples of monocotyledonous seeds and dicotyledonous seeds, 3 examples each. And then the final group would have had to match the seed, the name of the seed to the picture of the seed. So final instruction. One last thing for this lesson, a role play was used as the introduction for this lesson. So there would have been a role play. And